I want to talk a little bit about Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul. Rand Paul, of course, libertarian, running as a Republican in the Republican primary for 2016 president. Bernie Sanders, an independent, running as a Democrat in the 2016 Democratic primary for president. I spoke to Dave Rubin recently, host of the Rubin Report, and he pitched to me this idea that Bernie versus Rand, as unlikely as it would be that Bernie Sanders would win the Democratic nomination and that Rand Paul would win the Republican nomination, as unlikely as that scenario would be, that it would be the most interesting one, because you've got the guy who's the outlier in the Democratic Party with regard not to the ideas of the voters, but to the ideas of the other candidates. And you have Rand Paul, who sort of stands out as a libertarian, purportedly small government libertarian, although we've picked that notion apart quite a bit over the last few months within the Republican Party, and that it would be really interesting if they both were to face off against each other. And I thought that may well be true. Let's look, though, at the absurdity of what Rand Paul has said on some issue relative to what Bernie Sanders has said. And I looked around online, and they both commented about single-payer healthcare and the idea that healthcare is a right. I've got two quotes, one from Bernie Sanders and one from Rand Paul. Bernie Sanders, sober, logical. Rand Paul, unhinged, conspiracy theory, alternate universe. And I'll read both of them to you now. Bernie Sanders. What does Bernie Sanders think about healthcare being a right? Quote, I believe that healthcare is a right regardless of income, that every American has the right to the best quality healthcare that the system can offer. Lewis, it's clear. It's concise. It's unequivocating. It's a position I agree with completely, that of Bernie Sanders on this issue.
And it's been his position all along. Yeah, we agree with it. It makes sense, and it's succinct. It's to the point. I like it.
Rand Paul on the idea of healthcare being a right. Quote, with regard to the idea of whether or not you have a right to healthcare, you have to realize what that implies. I'm a physician. That means you have a right to come to my house and conscript me. It means you believe in slavery. It means you're going to enslave not only me, but the janitor at my hospital, the assistants, the nurses. There's an implied threat of force. Do you have a right to beat down my door with the police, escort me away, and force me to take care of you? That's ultimately what the right to free health care would be. As usual, Rand Paul missing the entire point. People think Rand Paul is a smart Republican. Number one, physicians already practice under certain rules where they must provide healthcare to patients in a healthcare setting, such as a hospital. And it has nothing to do with single payer healthcare, since we don't have that. And it has nothing to do with beating down Rand Paul's door and demanding that he look at your eyes or whatever it was that he did when he gave himself an accreditation on a board he created and appointed his wife to be president of. Nurses can't just walk out in the middle of their shifts without transferring care of their patients, or else they risk losing their licenses. This already is part of the law. It has nothing to do with single payer.
I find it hard to believe that someone who can tie their shoes would believe what Rand Paul is saying here. It seems to me like it's just good old-fashioned fear-mongering, right?
Either Rand Paul is even more idiotic and foolish than what even we thought, or it is just absolute fear-mongering, because nothing about it being a right to have health care is about forcing Rand Paul or anybody else to provide care for free. It's about a system that doesn't depend on you pulling out your credit card after you've had a procedure done to pay, right? That's what we're talking about. It's not about doctors working for free in their homes. This is the absurdity of so-called libertarianism. Taxation is not theft. Civil rights laws that force businesses to serve black customers in the same way that they serve white customers are not slavery. The hysteria is out of control. And if we want to make a libertarian argument, are we really a free society if people can't even change jobs or choose not to work because of fears of losing their health insurance? There's sort of higher and lower level orders of freedom here. And Rand Paul and so many of these so-called libertarians are missing the forest for the trees, I think is the best analogy to use.
Yeah, it seems there's a pretty simple definition of freedom when you look it up. but it's incredible how different we can really think about that.
It's been completely perverted by so-called libertarians. People are going to beat Rand Paul's door down if there's a right to health care and force him to dilate someone's pupils and check for nerve damage. I mean, it's just patently absurd. If I'm wrong, tell me on Twitter, twitter.com/dpakman.